Thank you, Michal. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad to be with you today. And I'd like to ask us to invite us to begin our practice today by dropping into our bodies, to take just a little bit of time to land right here as we are together. So if you're comfortable doing so, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. Of course, you can leave them open if that feels better for you today. But just begin with open or closed eyes to let your chin drop slowly towards your chest. You can leave your spine erect, not strained, but just releasing the back of the neck as you let the head, with its weight, begin to pull itself down towards the torso. And then, as feels comfortable for you, I invite you to let the head just roll, the neck to begin to release and stretch the skin, the muscles along the back of it by just slowly moving your head to one shoulder and then the next. Taking time to notice what sensations are there. Bringing your awareness to movements of ease or anywhere that might feel tight or in some other way not so pleasant. But if there's any sharp feelings, of course, of discomfort, please release this. And then bringing your chin back to center, slowly let your head come back up. You can leave your eyes closed if that's comfortable for you, and they are closed. Begin to bring awareness to the shoulders. Just feel how these shoulders are in your body right now. What's happening? And I'm beginning to roll one shoulder and then the next, then both together. I invite you to do the same in whatever way feels right for you. Just beginning to let your attention drop into sensation and inviting these shoulders to find some movement. And then as you're ready, you can bring the shoulders up close to the ears, maybe squeeze them up close, tight, tight, tight. And as you're ready, release the shoulders down away from the ears. And slowly let your eyes open if they were closed. And let the next breath, if it's comfortable for you, be full. And let that release be full and longer than the inhalation. And if you like, one final movement to settle into our bodies. You can take your hands and arms in back of you. And if it's comfortable, allow the hands to rest on the back of your chair, your seat, or on the lower back. And again, let the eyes close if that's comfortable and you'd like to. And on your next in-breath, just allow a gentle opening along the front of the body. Maybe lift the chin. And notice whatever is there, sensation-wise in the front, the chest, the belly, and then with an open mouth, if you like, release the breath and return your torso to an upright position if you're seated above the pelvis. And allow your eyes to, again, open if they were closed. And allow your hands to settle, perhaps on your thighs. Taking another moment to just feel whatever this body is presenting right now. Permission for your body to be just as you are. just as this changing body is right now. And I invite you to keep attuning to your physical sensations and be aware of your body as I offer the short teaching and guidance, followed by our practice of mindfulness, which we'll get to shortly. I'd like to invite us all to dedicate a practice today to the well-being of all those who are this day, impacted by Hurricane Ida, and to all those all beings who are displaced and potentially endangered today, be that because of fires, of floods, of pandemic, of war. So we dedicate our practice to the well-being and the release of suffering. And this dedication, and beginning by dropping into focusing our awareness in our bodies and bodily sensation, is not separate from the focus of our investigation otherwise today in our study together. Because today I'd like to talk about the connection between our mindfulness practice and the world in which we live, the world of this body, the environmental world, the social world, and worlds which all comprise the fabric and structure of what we experience from moment to moment as our changing reality. And as we engage in this fourth week together, for those of us who've been practicing regularly or following along as you have, or perhaps for the first time today, but we've been engaged this month in our daily sit with a focus on not only the upcoming new year, but the special seventh year cycle of this upcoming Jewish New Year, and that this year brings us the practice of Shemitah. And from a mindfulness perspective, the practice of Shemitah, the release of lands, of a sense of ownership, of profiting from the land that we call our own, those of us who are landowners. Also, the release of debts, those of us who have others indebted to us in some way, shape, or form. We practice letting go. And so this Shemitah practice is a practice of coming to stand in the truth of our lives in this moment, to assess what is actually happening in this body, in the relationships of our lives, in relationship to this land with which we live, and to the larger systems in which this particular body and piece, parcel of land is embedded and part of, and the others that comprise the social structures, that comprise the network of humanity, and all sentient beings in which we exist. And there are some, and I've had this question periodically myself too, who wonder, what does paying attention to the systemic nature of my existence or our existence, and looking at the challenges where systems become systems that oppress or cause conditions for that increase suffering in the world, what has this to do with my spiritual practice time? After all, I come to this time as a time of refuge, as a time to shore up my inner awareness, to fill up the well, so that then I can go live my life. While I think that's a valid question, in fact, what what I'm learning over time in my own practice, and I think that the Shemitah practice reinforces, is the perspective that actually mindfulness is not separate from, but rather deeply, deeply embedded in the real daily living, micro and macro, that I am experiencing, not as an idea, not as a concept, but as lived experience. And as my teacher, perhaps many of us here at some point have had the gift of learning from in person or reading or listening to Sylvia Boorstein, Jewish mindfulness teacher. Sylvia has a very simple 2-word answer to what is the purpose of meditation? What do I do this for? And Sylvia has been known to say 2 words: don't duck. In other words, can I stand in the truth of my life? Can I stand in the suffering of those around me, in the joys of those around me, or the joy within me in a given moment, and be here? As it says in the 13 attributes of compassion that we chanted together, or was chanted by Jews around the world this past Saturday night during Slichot services. At the heart of the 13 attributes of the divine of compassion are these words: Rav Chesed ve'emet. Abundant loving kindness and truth, the capacity to be very kind and to tell the truth. And so in this time today, I'd like to look, in just a moment, we'll look at a text and then we'll come to some sitting. But I'm going to preface it by saying that to begin to look at the systems of which we're a part, our economic systems, our race, the systems of privilege and entitlements in the system of this country, if you're in the United States of America, of which we're a part, it can bring up fear real easily and resistance. Either, let's say, if like myself, who I have the privilege in this society of walking with skin that is perceived as white, and in no way I owned through merit, but through the systems of the society. I walk through on this land with privilege, the privilege of white skin. Those of us who similarly have this white privilege, quote unquote, it can be really scary to begin to look at the systemic oppression that happens to others by just being the whiteness of white, right? And there are so many examples and ways that we'll look at during this week, and that we don't have to look far into the morning news to see examples of, but ways in which all of us are called in our mindfulness practice potentially, and in Shemitah practice potentially, to examine where we sit in a kind of mapping of how we hold advantages and how we participate in or abide by or are impacted by these systems, and to let go of our hold on status, on entitlements. And if we are finding ourselves in positions where we're not entitled or privileged, also to look with mindfulness at what that impact has been, is in our lives, and perhaps how to let go of being defined by those conditions. And what does liberation from those look like in a Shemitah year, and through a mindfulness practice grounded in tremendous kindness and the capacity to tell hear and bear and embody the truth in our lives. So with that now, I'd like to invite us to look at a text briefly. Adi, if you would, please. Thank you. In the Torah, in the book of Deuteronomy, as it says here, the Torah anticipates the kind of fear, the kind of then resistance that may arise as we learn, as we start to pay attention to the potential inequities, to the inequities in our quote unquote settlements in our society, and the suffering that can result from these inequities. And here, if we look at these verses, I'll read them in English. If, however, there is a needy person among you, one of your kinsmen, in any of your settlements in the land that Yud-He Vav-He, your God, is giving you. If you notice, there are people who don't have and really need amongst you. Do not harden your heart and shut your hand against your needy kinsman or kinsperson. Rather, continues, you must open your hand and lend that person sufficient for whatever they need. And beware, the next verse continues, lest you harbor the base thought. The seventh year, the Shemitah year, the year of release is coming, so that you are mean to your needy kinsperson and give them nothing. They will cry out to Yud-He Vav-He, to God, against you, and you will incur guilt. Instead, give to that person readily, and have no regrets when you do so. For in return, Yud-He Vav-He, your God, will bless you in all your efforts and in all your undertakings. So here I think the Torah is speaking to, anticipating the fear, the natural human fear of loss, the survival fear, that primal fear. If I give, I see someone else is in need, but I know the Shemitah year is coming and I'm going to not be able to, if I follow the laws, reap a profit from my land. How can I give someone now something of mine to alleviate their need? Because then I might be in a position of not having enough in the future. So it's a real basic kind of primal impulse to close off for self-protection, right? Rather than keep ourselves open. And instead the Torah is giving a practice instruction, speaking in a kind but true way to that human place of closing in fear that I and those of mine won't have enough. And instead the Torah says, no, you can't don't do that. You have to instead give. It's really important to keep your heart and your hand open, and don't have regrets, because you'll be provided for. You'll be blessed. And so I think that this raises probably a lot of questions on the material plane that are valid questions, and the spiritual pivot, the spiritual practice here is trust and be willing to let go. And so when we come to, I want to come back to that, what I named about potentially the kind of fragility or fear that might come when we begin to take stock, we begin to look at our place mindfully in the world around us in relationship to others, to the systems of oppression, to the land, and to begin to really open on an inner level to letting go of privilege, the privilege to say, I don't have to deal with this today. The privilege to say, I can, thank you, Adi, I need to take care of my own. The privilege to say, they're impacted, it's not me. And what if climate change should bring further, impact to me, that I need to take care of mine? So I can't they'll take care of theirs, they'll deal. It's so human. And it's just what it seems in this case, the Torah is saying, no. And our mindfulness practice is saying, take a look, don't duck. So I want to invite us to sit now. And with our dedication that we opened with this at the beginning of our sit, to bring to our mind and into our hearts, and collectively with the strength of our shared practice, almost looks to me like about 349 of us at this moment. This is a strong community of practice together, to allow ourselves to bring in the suffering and the instability and the realities of our environments, our cultures, our fellow sentient beings, and to bring into our practice the promise of mindfulness, which is not to solve, not to reinforce separation, but rather that through practice, I can learn, I can sit in the fire, I can sit in the flood, I can bear to look at what hurts, and I can practice being with whatever the fears are, the resistances, the ducking that naturally will occur when they do. But I can sit, and this is our instruction as we come into practice in just a moment together, that when you notice a thought arise that may be fearful, that may be resistant, that may say, well, however the mind may take shape, or in the body you notice a clenching or a gripping or a distraction. So that's when we bring the kindness, the attribute of Rav Chesed, tremendous kindness. Notice and watch it arise, and perhaps watch it pass and shift into what it will be next. Because we learn through sitting that the impermanence of sensation, of thought, of emotion, it will shift, it will move, like the breath. It's not static as long as we're alive. So I'm going to invite you again to come to a seat that is comfortable and where you can feel your feet touching maybe your socks or shoes or the ground underneath you. Feel that ground supporting you. You can let your eyes close if that's comfortable for you. And allow your awareness again to drop into the body. You can let your eyes be closed, or perhaps let them stay open, soft gaze. And might choose to bring your attention to the breath as it flows through the body in and out, or to sounds as they arise and pass, perhaps to prominent sensations as they come and go in the body. And just practice staying with this moment in that awareness of breath or sound or sensation. It's all we have to do, practice staying present to what's arising and passing. In the same way, noticing thoughts arising and passing. Release the hold on the thought if you find you're getting attached to it, immersed in it. Practice letting go, shmita, of that thought, coming back to the physical process we call body in this moment. And we'll sit in silence together for just about another minute or so. as you begin to bring your attention back to our shared community together. Allow your awareness to stay with your physical body and the sensations and the sense of hearing as we turn our collective practice to receiving the call of the shofar.
Thank you. I'm going to offer something a little, maybe something you haven't experienced before. I'm going to be sounding the shofar today, tomorrow, and on Thursday, but I'm only going to sound one note each day. Tekiah today, Shvarim Chua tomorrow, and Tekiah Gedolah on Thursday, to invite you to listen to what the meaning is of each separate note. It's the same as studying a text and just studying the word, or prayer and just looking at the separate line of the prayer. And for Tekiah, it's emet. It's what's the truth of this moment, as Rabbi Myriam just said. It's the sound that circumcises our heart, the strong, clear sound that awakens us to a sense of urgency, a call to action, makes me realize that I spend most of my time unaware as each moment arises and passes. It's a sound to wake up and notice and take action, but that moment passes and challenges me to be aware of the next moment. So I'm only going to be sounding Tekiah.
Thank you so much, Myriam and John, for leading today's practice. As you know, a traditional way of honoring a person's memory is to lead the congregation in prayer and in praise through the recitation of Kaddish. Early on in the pandemic, when so many shuls closed down in person, we started incorporating the recitation of Kaddish into our practice here at the Daily Sit. And at this time, I invite everyone who is reciting Kaddish or would like to join to rise with me and recite Kaddish today. And if you would like to put the name of the person who you are remembering in the chat, if that would be meaningful to you, please do so as well. Yitgadal, For those of you who are leaving now, we wish you good health and shalom. And we hope to see you again tomorrow or sometime soon at this same time. Thank you again, Myriam, John, and Adi, for your help behind the scenes. And those of you who would like to stay on, you're very welcome to do so. And you can ask my wonderful friend, Rabbi Myriam, any questions you have about today's teaching, about today's practice, or share your reflections on today's meditation. Myriam, for myself, I'll say, as comments may trickle in, I was so taken just by that one line you shared about that combination of chesed and emet. It's like almost, it's all there in those two words. How do we stand with what's true, what we feel inside ourselves, what we see in the world, and do so with chesed? And I thought perhaps you might share with us a little bit about when we see something that causes us pain, when we see something that makes us feel angry or hurt, how do we bring chesed to that piece of emet? I wondered if you could say a little more about that, please.
Thank you, Michal. What a question. It's like the question, at least for me right now, what a central question. I think, the practice we could undertake looking at a situation or practicing mindfulness as, in a more cold, analytical way, right? I need to solve this problem. There is suffering, something is wrong. Or we might find, this makes me really angry, this thing that's happening, or I feel really anxious. I don't know about any of you, but I can certainly identify any of those three for myself, the kind of cold, analytical distance, or going into anxiety or overfunctioning, or the fear-based sort of, anger and righteous indignation. All of those things I know to be true at times for myself. Where I think that the Rav Chesed comes in, the tremendous kindness, is that when I notice that my heart is closed, when I notice that I'm sort of like hot and angry, or I'm cool and overly intellectualizing something, for me, it's when I notice those ducking mechanisms that I can bring compassion for. Oy, wow, look, mirror, okay, you're afraid, or you're hurting, you're grieving, and then come to the same situation. It's like the suffering or the pain may still be there, but the compassion and the kindness I remember to bring, and it happens also through the body. Like you can notice, or for me, when there's a tensing or clenching in the body, and I can bring that kindness that says, oh, what do you need right now? Maybe you need to take a look out the window outside, or take a deep breath, or have a sip of water, or release the shoulders or the jaw, or the furrowed brow. But I think it's that intention to return to a loving stance around what truth-telling looks like in any given moment.
There are so many deep and wonderful questions coming in through the chat. The one that I can see right now asks if you can speak a little more to what letting go of privilege actually looks like.
Thank you for that question. Well, I can say I'm still learning about this. I am so deeply imprinted myself in terms of, let's just take one aspect of privilege in a racialized society, privilege from white, have this whiteness. So I think letting go of privilege is, like, for me, one way it shows up is to say, oh, you know what? It's part of the privilege I have that I can say, I don't have to deal with this all the time, if that makes sense. I have made personally somewhat of a shiviti, a guiding principle for my orientation of practice, where to direct my heart and mind, to not walk away, even if it hurts to see. Where I think it can show up in letting go concretely would be to center and amplify the voices of those who don't have the privilege in this in the particular cultural system. So, for example, rather than me speaking on behalf of, it would be, if really to do that in this moment would be to invite someone who can speak to it from a position of not having that privilege in this society. That is a really important one. There are so many more, but that I could stop there for now. But I guess in terms of where it's also noticing, I will say this one more thing, in terms of our practice today, like noticing when the fear kicks in, when the there's nothing else I can do, or I don't want to, or that's really not me, or I'm a good person. So, it's like letting go of letting myself off the hook to say, no, I need to lean in here and learn more, listen more. And practice helps me do that to the extent that I can.
Myriam, there's two questions here that feel related to me, although you'll say if they are or not, but they both have to do with the relationality, right, of some of the release we're trying to do and what happens when it may not be reciprocated the way we'd like to see. So one person asks, what's your thoughts about giving to those who appear to need but have compulsive behaviors and may not use the gift to their own best interest? And another says, how do we bring the 7th year of Shemitah for forgiveness and reparation if the other person is not ready for that practice?
Great questions. I think in both cases, there is the part of the practice of Shemitah and of what we're talking about in a contemporary sense too, is about staying in one's own lane, in the sense of I don't fully know what is happening in another person, but I'm going to trust that they have an inner teacher, that God or wisdom is flowing through them in a way that's inviolate, and that it's not for me to say or judge or know what is truly in their best interest. Like, part of the letting go is the certainty that I know what's best. And I don't mean to be overly simplistic or glib in saying that, because I'm aware that particular circumstances can be really can suggest otherwise. But it's when Mackenzie Scott, as an example, I was touched by when she gave a lot of money, in this past year. Like a lot of money to different on the ground small organizations and whatnot that she learned about. It was no strings attached. It was do with this as you see best. And I think in terms of the potential lack of reciprocity, including in terms of the second question, at least for me, I've come to see when I feel a need for reciprocity. Again, this is an aspiration. This is where I set my orientation, but in case it's helpful, is that part of something I need to let go of? Like, do I need the other to show up in a way that I need them to show up? Is that about my need, or can I release that need and in a kind way return to my anava, like in a sense, a humble place of, okay, they may not be in a position or they may not care to, thank me, but that's not the purpose. The purpose of this kind of Shemitah is to restore all to that state of dignity and equity. And it may not look the way my conditioned mind thinks it should look. I hope that's it's a big question, and that's one bite of a potential answer.
Mm-hmm. There are so many big and important questions, and I'm sorry that we're out of time to go into more of them. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And Rabbi Myriam, thank you so much for your heartfelt and really deep teaching. Blessings to all of you. And